Chapter 2, Position of Trust. The following evaluation of Mr. Johnson will demonstrate how he developed his embezzlement scheme against a video store, where he was employed for almost a year. He was given keys, computer passwords, and the alarm code. Mr. Johnson could go to the video store anytime he wanted, even after closing. He betrayed this position of trust that the video store placed upon him by using the store's access device to perpetrate his scheme. An abuse of trust is not necessarily an element of every embezzlement. The video store feels that Mr. Johnson took advantage of the position of trust that the video store placed in him by starting with small transactions first, and then when this wasn't detected by the bank or video store, he kept doing more transactions. Mr. Johnson abused his position of trust in a way that substantially facilitated the commission or concealment of the crime. Other employees, if they desired, could not embark upon a reasonably similar scheme of embezzling money because they were not in a position of trust. Since Mr. Johnson was a supervisor and had the authority to use the store's access device to make transactions and do settlement without the approval of other employees, proves that he betrayed his position of trust that was bestowed on him by the video store. Mr. Johnson embezzled thousands of dollars by using the video store's access device along with someone else's credit card to transfer money to his Mac Visa account. During the course of this investigation of Mr. Johnson, the video store found out that he was punching in the credit card numbers instead of using the actual card. Nothing suggests that the loss having to do with unauthorized charges made by punching in the numbers should be treated different from unauthorized charges made with the plastic itself. Legislative history also suggests that credit card number fraud should be treated the same as credit card fraud. Mr. Johnson's position of trust did give him the ability to commit a difficult-to-detect wrong because he was under no supervision when he opened or closed the video store. According to a reliable source, Mr. Johnson's mother was letting him use her Visa credit card, and he would pay her back for whatever he used. His mother's credit limit was $10,000, and this was when Mr. Johnson started using her card to make fraudulent sales on the video store's point-of-sale terminal. He accomplished this by making a sale of $200 and returning the $200 to his Mac Visa account. To keep the video store from detecting these bogus sales, he settled the point-of-sale terminal to zero. I would like to emphasize here that Mr. Johnson did not have his mother's actual plastic card. He just punched in the numbers. I'm not sure whether he had his mother's permission or not to do this. The video store believes that Mr. Johnson got permission from his mother in the beginning, but when he used up her credit limit, he acted on his own. The reason that Mr. Johnson's scheme was going undetected was because he made sure he settled the point-of-sale terminal after every transaction. At this point of the story, Mr. Johnson still kept using his mother's credit card by punching in the numbers and forcing the sales through. This was when Mr. Johnson first used the force sale button of the point-of-sale terminal. However, Mr. Johnson didn't call to get the approval number. He made up a 6-digit number and any amount, and the same sale went through. Now Mr. Johnson was back in business. Even though his mother's Visa credit card had no more credit left, he still was transferring bogus sales to his Mac Visa account. Mr. Johnson didn't care if the video store was going to owe all the money that he charged to his mother's credit card account that was over her limit. I think the turning point of the story is when Mr. Johnson was given classified information about Frank's case with the government. This was when Mr. Johnson accelerated his scheme. He got as much money as he could. This caused the merchant bank to notify the video store about the large sales. When Mr. Johnson was confronted by the owner of the video store, he said that he used the point of sale terminal to transfer money from one account to another and not to worry because he had all the receipts and he would make sure everything went through. The owner told Mr. Johnson that he can't work there unless he showed the receipts and settlement to her. Then Mr. Johnson told her he would bring everything in later that day. He never did. The video store owner called the bank the next day and told them about her confrontation with Mr. Johnson. The bank told the owner that the fraudulent charges to Mr. Johnson's mother's Visa account were over her limit and would be charged back to the video store merchant bank. Mr. Johnson got the money, and now the bank was saying that the video store owed the money and that the video store would have to prove they didn't.